In this video, I'm going to describe an important event that I've celebrated. And in my answer, I'm going to include what it was, when it was, where I celebrated it, and how I felt about it. Well, when it comes to events or occasions that are celebrated in my country, we celebrate birthdays, graduations, weddings, wedding anniversaries, Christmas, New Year, to name but a few. The one I'd like to talk about is my university graduation. My university degree lasted 4 years, and I was over the moon when I received the news that I had passed, as at times it was challenging and it seemed never ending. The relief I felt was indescribable. When it came to my graduation day, I wanted to make it a day to remember. My family and siblings all attended the ceremony. It was quite nerve-wracking waiting for them to announce my name, and then I had to walk on stage and collect my degree certificate. The look of pride on my family's faces is something I'll never forget. After the ceremony, we went to a fancy restaurant where we had a slap-up meal. I treated my parents because they had supported me through university, so I wanted to pay them back for all their support and generosity. It was the least I could do. Later that day, I met up with my fellow graduates and we had a party. We were dancing and partying until the early hours. It really was the perfect end to the perfect day. There was a hint of sadness though, because it was the end of one chapter and the start of another. My student days were over, and it was time to go out into the real world and get a job. Nevertheless, it was a great way to mark the end of my student days, and I'll never forget it. So let's take a look at some of the keywords and phrases in this answer. It's important that you don't memorize these answers and try to reproduce them in the IELTS speaking test, but it's good to try to remember the keywords and phrases, so if you get this topic in the IELTS speaking test, then hopefully these keywords and phrases will come into your head and you'll be able to use them to try to get a higher band score. So first of all, you need to introduce your topic, and you can do it with something like, well, when it comes to. And then here we're talking about an event, but I've used another word, an occasion, which also means event. I like to list things in my answers because it gets lots of vocabulary in a short space of time. So here I've put lots of vocabulary, and the slightly more complex one is a wedding anniversary. This is what happens every year. On the day you got married, it's like your wedding anniversary. To name but a few, this is a good way to end a list. So you're saying these are just a few of them. To name but a few. When we're talking about how long something lasted, how long something went on for, we use the verb last. I was over the moon. Not a massive fan of a lot of idiomatic expressions like it's not my cup of tea, it was raining cats and dogs. But here's one I don't mind. To be over the moon means absolutely delighted, thrilled, very, very happy. Note here the use of past perfect for an action that happened in the past before another action in the past. So she had passed, and she received the news that she had passed. This will really impress the IELTS examiner if you can use past perfect in your answers. Instead of saying it was difficult, it was hard, you need lots of other adjectives that are much more complex. Challenging means it was incredibly difficult. And something that seems to go on and on and on, it's never ending. And you can describe relief as being indescribable. So something that you're struggling to describe is indescribable. A day to remember is a good collocation. A holiday to remember. A week to remember. Siblings means brothers and sisters. And with ceremony, we collocate it with, it goes with, to attend a ceremony. Nerve-wracking. This is something that makes you incredibly nervous. To announce my name. This is just a slightly more complex way of saying to say my name. And the look of pride. This means they were looking so proud. We went to a fancy restaurant. This is just more complex. You could say an expensive restaurant, but fancy means it's expensive, but also really posh, really upmarket and nice. A slap-up meal. This is a expensive meal with loads of food, a bit like a feast. To treat my parents. If you treat somebody, it means you pay for them. So what I'm saying here is I paid for my parents' food because they had supported me. Another example of the past perfect. And I wanted to pay them back. This means like they've paid for me, so I'm paying them back. Not really paying them back because it was just a meal. But I say it was the least I could do. So I'm saying it's not very much. And this was the absolute least, the absolute minimum I could do. It was the least I could do. When you have graduated from university, you are called a graduate. And fellow graduates are people who graduated at the same time as you. Here I've used some past continuous to show that I can use lots of different grammatical tenses. We were dancing and partying. Until the early hours, this means until sort of 1 or 2 in the morning. The perfect end to the perfect day. You can change this expression if you were talking about holidays, for example, the perfect end to the perfect holiday. And it's just a much more complex way of saying it was great. A hint of sadness. Now we use a hint of with lots of nouns, and it means a little bit. So I was a little bit sad. Here's an idiomatic expression, the end of one chapter and the start of another. It's saying, okay, that period in my life had finished, but I was starting a new period, which was exciting. To go out into the real world and get a job. This is what we say students do. So they finish their studies and they have to go into the real world and start work. To mark the end of, it's like something that you do to celebrate the end of something, to put a marker on the end of something and say, actually, that is finished and now I'm going to start something else. So what I recommend you do now is go through this video again. Remember, don't memorize it and learn it word for word, but learn these words and phrases. And they're useful for other topics, not just this topic. For example, if you've got a topic about your hometown, or if you're describing your hometown, you can use fancy restaurants. So the words and phrases that I use in these videos, I try to make them that they are applicable to other topics as well. So thank you very much for watching this video, and good luck if you have an IELTS test coming up in the very near future.